Hey there, folks. Welcome to Head, Heart, and Hustle, the podcast for creatives. As always, I'm your host, Alan Plummer. Thank you for listening. Today, we've got something a little bit unique, a little bit different. Think of it as a bonus episode. Today, we're going to talk about The Last Jedi, the most recent Star Wars movie that came out literally a week ago today. I want to experiment a little bit. A lot of times, I have these ideas about creativity and my career and how the two merge together, and art and commerce, and my brain's kind of always going. And a lot of times these ideas convert into pieces that I write and publish, either through Medium or LinkedIn or other places. And so I thought, well, if I'm having these thoughts already and I'm committing them to paper, why not convert that into a podcast and share that with you guys? So curious to know your thoughts. If you're interested, let me know, but let's dive right in. I am going to say up front, this will contain spoilers about the movie. If you're a Star Wars fan, but you have not seen The Last Jedi, just stop right now. Come back and listen after you've seen it, okay? Now, I was a huge Star Wars fan growing up. I actually saw the original Star Wars probably 9 times in the theater. I was about 7 years old when it came out. It had a huge impact on my childhood. I actually think it was part of the reason that I wanted to become a creative person. Some of my earliest memories are having tons and tons of Star Wars dolls and constantly playing with them and making up stories and missions and all kinds of concepts. And I think Star Wars helped me become a storyteller at a very young, impressionable age. And that kind of continued. That love of Star Wars continued as the rest of the original trilogy played out. So when The Last Jedi came out last week, because Star Wars was such a major part of my childhood, naturally I went to see it. I actually saw it 3 times, believe it or not, and I was thrilled because it was the first time my son, who's getting ready to turn 7, had actually asked to see a Star Wars movie with me. That was a big moment for me as a father, and so I was pretty proud of that. Now, if you saw the film or you have any kind of interest in Star Wars at all, then you probably know that The Last Jedi left fans pretty split over the film, drastically so. And one of the things that I like to do after watching a movie is I like to go online and see what the reviews say, see what comments are in places like Reddit, see what people tweet about something, even going on Facebook. Because I don't always talk a lot about films and music with my wife. So I like to kind of see what other people think online because it gives me something to bounce my own ideas off of. And so I did that, and it became apparent to me as I kind of browsed through the web that a lot of folks had a really visceral negative reaction to The Last Jedi. In fact, saying that many of these hardcore Star Wars fans of a certain age, most of whom, honestly, I think were Gen Xers who saw the original film as children, much like I did. And to say that those folks literally hated it is not an understatement. In fact, some of those fans disliked the movie so much that they're actually petitioning Disney to remove The Last Jedi from Star Wars canon. Seriously. So it leads me to think and say, well, really, what gives? When I think about judging any kind of art or any kind of creative endeavor, I'm a huge proponent of collecting feedback from multiple people and then looking for patterns as kind of this indicator of what needs to be addressed. In other words, if I'm writing something and I share it with, let's say, 8 people, and 6 of those 8 people give me feedback around a certain paragraph or a certain section of dialogue, they might have different thoughts on what I need to do with that section. But the fact that 6 of those 8 people took issue with or stumbled over the same little section of copy is pretty much indicative of the fact that it needs to be addressed. Now, I'm more than likely, as an artist and a creative person, I'm going to come up with my own solution to address that problem, right? Different folks are going to have different thoughts on how you should fix something. But the pattern is there, and the pattern doesn't lie, because all these people are stumbling and having issues with the same section. And so that's how I think about creative feedback. It's literally looking for patterns that you can walk away from and apply kind of your own lens to and take action on. So I did the same thing here with The Last Jedi. As I started to read about the movie afterward, I really quickly saw this pattern that was appearing in all the negative feedback in the comments I was seeing about the movie, regardless of what site it was or whether or not it was on Facebook or chat rooms or other places. And this debate that started to play out around the movie really got me thinking about why we react to things the way we do. And that led me to a theory, which is this. I think that your reaction to The Last Jedi, if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, says a lot about how you approach your career and your creative work. Now, stick with me on this. One of my favorite quotes in the movie is when Luke Skywalker tells Rey, this is not going to go the way you think. It's very great at foreshadowing the rest of the movie, honestly. And personally, I love the movie. There's a writer named Jacob Hall who wrote this excellent piece for SlashFilm that echoes a lot of the things that I liked. And I'll link to it in the description for this so you can find it there. But most importantly, The Last Jedi really represents a changing of the guard in the Star Wars universe. Think about it. Luke Skywalker dies. The Jedi as a religion are pretty much wiped out and phased out. And it happens by Yoda, nonetheless, the wisest and most likable Jedi of them all. Literally burns down a tree and it's just like, okay, that's it, fresh start. And then you've got Leia, the leader of the Resistance, who finally is starting to recognize her own mortality and is in the process of handing leadership of the Resistance over, even going so far as kind of looking to the Oscar Isaac's character of Poe Dameron as the potential new leader for the Resistance. Not only that, but the movie's also really subversive. You've got a female lead searching for family who ends up being disappointed in learning that she doesn't have one. You've got a major villain who dies unceremoniously in this kind of surprise moment. And we learn that the major heroes of the original trilogy aren't larger than life anymore. We learn that they're actual flawed human beings with regrets, mistakes, and as Mark Hamill explained, hubris. He uses that term hubris a lot as he talks about the Jedi. So when you think about all that, it's really a lot to take in for a bunch of people that are just hoping to see Mark Hamill swing around this CGI sword and kind of chop down some bad guys. Another one of my favorite quotes in the film is from Kylo Ren. And he says to Rey at the end of one of their big battles in the throne room, "Let the past die, even if you have to kill it." Now, the theme of change runs throughout The Last Jedi, and okay, I'll admit it's pretty heavy-handed at times, but there's no denying that it's there. It's as if the movie's telling us, okay, people, you had your childhood. Now, we need to evolve Star Wars so that your kids can have theirs. I think it's absolutely understandable that Disney would take the Star Wars franchise in this direction. And in my opinion, it's actually a really smart move, given that the company wants Star Wars to extend beyond all of our lives and become this massive franchise that could last for hundreds of years, who knows. So I just thought the movie was great. It had energy, it had humor, and it helped me as a viewer discover that my favorite characters had baggage, that they were flawed, they weren't perfect. Now, as a child, the heroes of Star Wars inspired me. They motivated me to do what's right, not to be scared of adversity, most importantly, to have faith. Now, as an adult, the heroes of Star Wars are reminding me that no one's perfect. The Last Jedi and the evolution of the characters there show me that we've all made mistakes, that we're human. I know that I've grown over the past 40 years since the original Star Wars came out, and things for me certainly aren't black and white any longer. You could argue that the characters of Star Wars have changed and grown too, and I actually find that really comforting. So, if you're a Star Wars fan and you're a creative, let me ask you a couple things. First of all, did you enjoy The Last Jedi, or did you just really hate it and despise it? Why is that? And what themes in that movie really resonated with you, either in a positive way or a negative way? Now, put that aside and think about your creativity and your career. How do you react when there are changes presented to you in either space? Do you as an individual embrace opportunities to grow and evolve and learn new skills? Or do you like to stay in your sandbox? When you're doing something creative, do you like to experiment and try new things? Are you comfortable learning as you go and kind of having that growth and challenge and maybe failing? Or do you like to really stay within really clear guardrails and be able to focus on what you do it well and do time and time again? If you think about your answers to those two spaces, I'm willing to bet that there are similarities between your reactions to both. Now, personally, for me, I embrace change. I love it. It's helped me a lot in my career. It's helped me a lot creatively. It's why I do this podcast. It's why I'm actually doing this episode, to experiment a little bit. But challenges and new experiences make life interesting for me. So maybe that's why I love it when my expectations are thrown for a loop when I go to see a movie. And maybe that's why I like The Last Jedi so much. Now, with most things in life, how we react to the world around us often says more about us as a person than what we're actually reacting to. I tend to think The Last Jedi is a perfect example of that, specifically when it comes to creativity and how we think about change when it comes to our art and what we do. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at headheartandhustle.com. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, do that. headheartandhustle.com/newsletter. You know we're on Twitter, we're on social media. I'll be back soon. I'm going to start working on season 3 in January. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one.